This is the podcast, episode 11, Transforming to a Life Beyond Limits. Hey, what's good, everybody? Ben Dailey here. I want to welcome you again to the podcast. I can't believe it. I've made it to episode 11. And I created this podcast, with one thing in mind. Every single week, I want to show up and I want to remind you of the gospel. Good news. God has done it all. The only thing you can do now is respond. That's it. Thank God. He offers no carrots. He offers no sticks, just invitations. Come to me. Every time we get together on the podcast, would you hear him say, come to me? He loves you more than you know. And if you need proof, look at the cross, look at the empty grave. He died for you. He now lives for you. His intentions are clear. He wants you to be with him and enjoy him forever. So much goodness on the podcast that the bad news doesn't even matter. So no matter what platform you are listening on, or if you're watching the video format, this podcast is created to bring you goodness. You may be driving, you may be running errands, you may be posting on Instagram, you may be cleaning up your apartment, you may be at the gym working out, got your headphones on, you may be sitting in a restaurant typing on your laptop, you may be sending emails. Listen, I just want to encourage you. And would you help me get this out? Please do me a favor, rate the podcast on Apple, write a review, help me take this goodness everywhere. Would you do that? I tell you, today, I have been looking forward to this. I've got another guest, y'all. He's in the house. My dear friend, Duane White. By the way, he's only the third guest on the podcast. This guy has traveled the world. Are you ready? 4.3 million air miles to be exact. Preaching, prophesying in over 60 nations, a passion to help leaders. He has trained and equipped over 100,000 leaders face to face. And Duane and his wife, Chris, served with their family as missionaries to the UK for many years. Amazing story. You're in for a treat today. Duane was actually born with a severe cleft lip and palate, and he was told he would never be able to speak. Listen to this. Never be able to speak without impediment. Well, as an international speaker and author, he now miraculously uses his communication skills to teach, to challenge people, to fulfill their destiny. Duane has a Master of Ministry degree in Christian leadership, full-time ministry for 33 plus years. He's the director, overseer of O2 Network, which, by the way, I've had the privilege the last couple of years of preaching at their conference. It's a great conference. He oversees Beyond These Shores missions. He's the lead pastor of Bridge Church in Denton, Texas. But here's the greatest of all. He's got an amazing family. I love his family, 4 adult children, and now a grandson, 18 months old, Zion. Duane White, so good to have you here today.
Thank you.
I'm honored.
Thank you so much, Pastor Ben. The honor is all mine. Wow. I love you and Pastor Kim, your whole family, the whole Calvary family. What you guys are doing, not only in Irving, Texas, but really right across this nation, and now I believe extending the globe. You're so much more than a local church. You're a movement.
Wow.
And there is a move of grace that is being released in the earth through your voice, through your lives, through your ministry. And I'm just honored not only to be a part of that, but to call you friend.
Yes.
And to be able to do life together, not just ministry together. But thank you so much, Pastor Ben, for having me on today. I'm excited.
I have looked forward to you being here because I believe in your message, your brand new book. Well, actually, it's an updated and expanded version, I guess, is what you'd call it. But this new book is called Hooper Man. Are y'all ready for this? Hooper Man. I actually stole your subtitle for this podcast, Transforming to a Life Beyond Limits. Okay, first of all, Hooper Man. Those that are listening right now, Hooper Man. What is Hooper Man? I mean, you may look at this cover and say, unless you're watching the podcast, you don't see me holding this book, but you'd look at it and maybe think, well, was there, a typo or something? Hooper Man. Shouldn't this be Superman? Talk to us about this new book called Hooper Man.
That's a great question, Pastor Ben. Thank you. People, I get that all the time. They say, didn't you mean Superman? Because that looks like a Superman logo with an H on it. What's the whole thing about Hooper? But Hooper is the Greek word where we get our English word super or hyper. It's a prefix. It can stand alone like super, or when you put it to anything, it takes that word beyond itself. So like a supermarket, it's not just a market, right? It's a supermarket.
Right.
A hyperactive kid. Anybody ever seen a hyperactive?
Right.
Some mom right now is going, yes, I have one running around my house right now.
That's what my mom's probably saying, listening right now, thinking about me.
And probably all of your brothers, maybe 6 brothers, 6 of you. It's not just an active kid. It's a hyperactive kid. So it takes that word beyond itself. And I got a revelation about 20 years ago, Pastor Ben, that God has used this word hooper and he embedded it all through the New Testament, especially in Apostle Paul's writings, to give us this clue that he wants us to live a life beyond ourselves. Wow. He doesn't want us to be limited to our intellect, to our talent, to our performance, to our ability. He wants to take us beyond that. So there's a few key scriptures. One is where Paul talks about being more than conquerors. That's Hooper Nikeo.
Wow.
Hooper Nike. Nike is to be victorious, to overcome. So we're not just overcomers, we're more. We're Hooper overcomers. Or where he talks about the exceeding greatness of the power that's in us. That phrase, exceeding greatness, is Hooper Bole. We'll talk about that maybe in a minute. But here's one you'll love. There's a whole bunch, but here's one you'll love. Where the Bible says where sin does abound.
Oh, come on.
Grace does Hooper abound.
Wow.
So God has always got Hooper. I could go on, but you get the idea. He wants us to live a life beyond. Why? Because God is an exceeding God. You say, what do you mean? Prove that to me, Pastor Duane. Well, think about this, Pastor Ben. One lamb, one man.
Right.
Sacrifice one man. Then one lamb for one household. Then later, one lamb, one nation. Then you get to Jesus. One lamb for all of humanity. Wow. And you think, well, God can't exceed himself there. Wait a minute. There are more people alive on the planet today than the cumulative history of mankind.
Come on.
So today, the blood of Jesus exceeded what it did yesterday. And
good.
Tomorrow, it'll exceed it again and again and again. I always say this, God always has something else up his sleeves because he's got big sleeves.
Come on. And this is so good. We don't hear stuff like this. We're always hearing how limited we are.
Right.
How limited, but we can live a limitless life. Getting a revelation of this Hooper kind of life. I love it. Hooper. God is a Hooper God, and he wants me to live a Hooper life. I love that. A life beyond. And as I've looked at this book, by the way, I've had the great privilege of, I guess, writing, some praise for this book. And I love how this book is broken into 2 parts. I wrote a little something here where I talk about you better watch out. There's a warning after reading Hooper Man. You just might start enjoying your life more. Be careful. You don't want to touch this book if you don't want to enjoy your life. So it's broken into 2 parts. So tell us, why did you write it this way? And really, what can we expect to learn in each part of the book?
Well, like you said, Pastor Ben, this is an updated and expanded version of a book I wrote about 15 years ago, a little over 15 years ago. And we had sold it. It had been translated into several languages,
Right.
literally put in the hands of pastors and leaders, thousands of them all over the world. And God really put it on our heart to take it to the next level and to pass these Hooper principles to the next generation
Wow.
who hadn't really heard me preach. I actually went around the world for several years. I'd preach Hooperman, and I'd rip my shirt off and have a big H on my chest, and people would go nuts. It was a lot of fun. Freaked a few old ladies out from time to time. One lady said, if you had gone any further, I was leaving. She thought I was going to go down to my tights, I guess. I don't know. But we updated it, and so what we wanted to do is break it into two parts: the principles and then the practical.
Okay.
The theology, part one is the theology of Hooper, and then part two is paired with real life examples that make it tangible. So we have
good.
the principle and the practical, the theology and the tangible. So we talk about in the second part, Hooper grace, Hooper healing, Hooper homes, Hooper finances. So we really rooted and grounded in, okay, this is the idea of it. How does that work out in yours and my life?
That's so good. We can experience beyond Hooper in every area of our life.
Yes.
No limit.
No limit.
Every area of our life. I love that fact that you don't just inspire us in the book to live a Hooper life, but you tell us how. How do you do it? And I love it. You give real life examples, stories that I think help us see what it's going to look like. One of the things I like, and I think this is critical right now for where we're at. I mean, this has just been people say a wild and woolly year, you know. I mean, unprecedented, you know, all kind of words you're going to hear about this year.
Hey, what's up? Xander here, and I'm one of the content creators here at Calvary. You can stay connected to Calvary in a variety of ways. Follow us on social media by searching Calvary Church CC on Instagram and Facebook. Want to check out our YouTube? Search Calvary Church and subscribe and turn on post notifications. The best way to stay connected, though, is by downloading the Calvary Church app. Go to the App Store and search Calvary Church CC. Download the app, create your own profile, and turn on notifications so that you're always in the know about all things Calvary.
You talk about breaking out. Man, I'm telling you now more than ever, there's some things we got to break out of. There's some I talked this past week or a couple of weeks ago at Calvary Church, you know, about really breaking out of fear and intimidation and all of this stuff. But you talk about breaking out, breaking barriers, the way you say it. And in part one of the book, you break down verse by verse where Paul writes 2 Corinthians 4, and you begin there in verse 7, and you talk about the treasure exposed. I want you for just a moment, because this is powerful, I want you to take some time on the podcast today. What does that mean? How does it relate to us? Because people are saying, I got to break out of some things. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, this book really is about breaking barriers. I love barrier breaking stories.
Yeah.
I love, in the book, I tell the story of Roger Bannister, one of my heroes, he's a British guy. They said the human body could not run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And on May 6, 1954, with a strong crosswind at a place called Harrow on the Hill, Roger Bannister ran the mile in 3 minutes, 59.6 seconds. The funny thing is, Pastor Ben, before he had done that, the previous record, which was 4 minutes and 1 second, had stood for 9 years. After Roger Bannister broke the record, it broke again. His record got broke in 46 days. So God wants to use you and me to break barriers, to prove that what used to be impossible is now possible, so that others following us, my son, your daughters, my daughter, your daughter, my daughters, that they can do things. It becomes possible now. And I love thinking about like Chuck Yeager, who was told, they said you couldn't break the sound barrier. A plane could not go at supersonic speed. Cannonballs and bullets were known to fly at supersonic speeds, but planes couldn't do it. Chuck Yeager had tried 6 times and failed. He was riding a horse the day before his 7th time, and the horse goes one way, he goes the other, falls off, breaks his ribs. He knew if he tells anybody that NASA's going to ground him, so he goes to a veterinarian to get his ribs taped up. He makes a broom handle. Sometimes to break a barrier, you got to go through some opposition, but it's worth it. So watch this, Pastor Ben. He gets his broom handle. He pulls the cockpit down on Glamorous Glennis, named after his wife. That's the name of his plane, named after his wife, Glennis. And they drop him over the Mojave Desert. And he said, I got to Mach 0.7, my side excruciating with pain, my mind riddled with doubt. He said, I got to Mach 0.8, Mach 0.9, everything in me telling me, will a plane disintegrate? Will I die? What's going to happen? And I'll never forget, Pastor Ben, when I read the story of how he pushed one more time. And when he did, you hear this sonic boom. And he broke, they called it the demon. The demon, the sound barrier. He broke that barrier. And once he did, he said, listen, all the opposition was on the front side of my breakthrough. And the moment I broke through, he said it was like a poke through Jell-O. He said it was smooth as a baby's behind. And I want to prophesy to somebody.
You better talk.
All of the opposition that's coming at your life right now
Say it.
is because the enemy knows that you're about to get a breakthrough. And once you do, it's going to be like a poke through Jell-O.
Wow.
And it's going to be what he said it was worth all of the opposition. Now,
come on.
Now we get to this text that you talk about, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7 through 18, the end of the chapter.
Right.
We go verse by verse, but that first verse where Paul says we have this treasure in jars of clay pots.
Talk about that.
So the treasure we know is what? The resurrection life of Jesus. But I don't know about you, Pastor Ben, but if I have a treasure, I'm not putting it in a clay pot.
Right.
I'm going to put it in Fort Knox. I'm going to put it
I'm
where the
gonna lock
crown
it up.
jewels are.
That's right.
In London. I'm going to lock that thing up. But God says, no, I'm going to put it in clay pots. Why? He said, and then he tells us, so that the excellency of the power, King James says, or some translations say the exceeding power, might be of God, not of us. That word, excellency of power or exceeding power, is a Hooper word. It's hyperbole. It's where we get our phrase, our English word hyperbole, which means an exaggeration. If there's any English teachers watching the podcast, they would know what hyperbole is. Or if you ever owned if you've ever raised, you don't own your kids. Sometimes you feel like you do, but they own you actually.
That's right.
But if you've ever raised a teenage boy, they're great at hyperbole. When my son was 16, he'd come in and say, I'm starving to death.
That's hyperbole.
That's hyperbole.
That's right.
And God says, I want the exaggeration.
You better talk.
To be God and not you. So listen, Pastor Ben, I say it this way. If people can look at my life and explain it, I'm living it the wrong way. If people can look at my life and say, your life makes sense, I'm not living it Hooper. But if people look at my life and say, that can't be Ben Dailey. How in the world did he do all that he's done? So the glory goes to God. But now here's a really key principle.
That's good.
And I know I'm on safe territory, what I'm about to say here. I'm in good company.
Say it.
But I think you probably were raised like I was. If we talk about this treasure, you take a treasure, you put it in a clay pot, you seal the pot. How are you going to get the treasure out? Mm-hmm. Well, the logical conclusion is you got to break the jar.
That's right.
Now, I got told that God was in the jar breaking business.
Yeah.
So I was told God gave me a cleft lip and palate to teach me a lesson. I got told that he gives cancer to people so they can learn lessons. And then I read my Bible.
Come on.
And I realized God is not in the jar breaking business. But the rest of this text, and we don't have time to unpack it today, but the whole rest of this text, we unpack how then that works. The enemy, what the enemy means for evil, God turns for good. So I say it this way. I call it caveman theology. It's so simple a caveman can do it.
That's good.
And I say it like God, good.
Yes.
Devil,
Yeah.
But you got to kind of grunt.
You may want to try that right now,
can
wherever
you do
you're
it with-
listening.
yeah.
Wherever.
Will you do it with me, Pastor Ben? Come on.
Let's do it.
And they'll do it
Let's
with us.
do it.
Wherever
Here we go.
you are.
Here we go.
God,
good.
devil, bad.
So you got to add that.
You got to add the because that's the therapy.
Yes.
The therapy is in the
That's it.
It's a theology so simple
That a caveman can get
do
it.
because we make things too hard.
That's right.
So here you say, what does that mean? It means to me that when I don't understand life, if it's bad, it's the devil. If it's good, it's God. And God is so good.
Come on.
That He'll turn bad things for my good. So in the book we talk about how David, little David goes to face Goliath, and he says, "Today, I'm gonna cut your head off, and I'm gonna feed it to the birds." That's a bold statement for a boy that ain't even got a butter knife.
That's right.
How's he gonna do it?
That's right.
Well, what we all know, he used Goliath's sword. What was Goliath's sword created to do? It was created to kill
him.
His enemies.
That's right.
Goliath's enemies, which is David's enemy. So the very weapon created to destroy David is the very weapon God used to deliver David. So the very thing, Pastor Ben, that the enemy is using to kill you is the very thing God's going to use to deliver you and do Hooper things. So when people look at you, it's not some great, like David, it's not some great warrior. It's a little shepherd boy who knows how to kill lions and bears by the power, the Hooper power of God. So I believe that this is a word for somebody today.
Say it.
That what the enemy meant for evil.
Oh, yeah.
God's going to turn for your good. So God doesn't give you cancer. The enemy tries to give you cancer, but then God will use that. And watch this. He's so good at it that we think he must have done it. And that's where we get a bad theology. That's where we get confused. We think, this turned out so wonderful. It must have been God. And the reality is, no, it wasn't that God did it. It's just that, I say it this way. Jesus does not have to be the author of something to be the Lord of it. So even though he didn't author that adversity, he is so good. He is so good that he'll be the Lord of it if you'll just let him.
Only we can bring good out of good. God knows how to bring good out of bad.
Oh, say that.
And there are people dealing with bad things, and they've been told that it's God.
Yeah. And until you get that straight, you can't. How can you believe God for Hooper when you think he's punishing you somehow?
You know what I love about the caveman deal is that a kid can get that.
Yes.
If a kid can't get it, then it's not kingdom stuff.
That's right.
It's so simple a kid can get it.
Our kids need to know this.
Yes, they do.
Our children need to know.
Yes, they
hey,
do.
God didn't give Granny cancer. The enemy tried to do, but God's going to use it. Hey, God didn't bring this pandemic to judge America. No, but God will use anything. No matter what happens, there is no thing that he can't be the Lord of. I want my grandson to grow up knowing that.
Wow.
That's Hooper.
That is so good. This book, man, has got some great, phrases, one-liners, Twitter stuff, in here, and it's so powerful. One of the things you say is, never run at your giants with your mouth closed, and the weapon the enemy created, what you just said, I love that. The weapon the enemy created to destroy you is the very weapon God's going to use to deliver you. So powerful. Then there's another one, face the facts, but embrace the truth. We don't have time to unpack it today. That's the one. That's the one I want to talk about, but I don't have time. But I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Will you come back next week?
Pastor Ben, I would do anything for you.
You
the
really
answer
would.
is
Wow.
always yes.
Okay,
For you.
we're going to come back. I'm going to start right there next week. Face the facts, but embrace the truth. Because sometimes when people hear the stuff we say, from the realm of faith, what God believes true. They say, well, hold on, we still got to deal with a reality. Oh, there are things that we're facing in the natural realm that it's reality. But what you're saying is we're learning to live from another reality.
Yes.
That's actually more real.
Yes.
Than what you see here.
Yes.
Or feel.
Yes.
It's Hooper. It's beyond.
It's beyond.
No limits, no boundaries. I tell you what, it's been so fun having you today. I am so grateful that you're on the podcast. You're going to come back, but real quick, before we go, I want the book, Hooper Man. What do I do? What do I do? How do I get it? I want everybody listening today, get this message, transforming to a life beyond limits. And after you tell them, I got a gift that I actually want to give today on the podcast. Talk about it. How do they get it?
All right. Thank you, Pastor Ben. Yeah, it's very simple. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it Kindle. You can download the ebook version on Kindle. You can go to my website, Duane. That's Duane. So Duane can be spelled a lot of different ways. Duane White.online. You can buy it directly from us. The easiest way is probably Amazon. It's Huperman, just like Superman, but with an H. And you can get it in all those locations. I'd love it. I'd appreciate it. And they can start reading and pick up next week with us.
And you can get the digital.
Yeah, you can get the digital. Get it, put it right on your smart device.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I'm hoping today you're going get Hooperman, transforming to a life beyond limits. I want to say again, thank you to everyone who's not only listening to the podcast but sharing it on all platforms with your friends, your families, your coworkers. Let me tell you something. Right now, there's a lot of bad going on, but isn't it good to know that you can come to a place like this, you can hear that God can take the bad and he can use it for our good. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Calvary app, if you don't have the app, download it. One word, Calvary Church CC. Download the app. Let me know you're watching. Stay connected. At Ben W. Dailey on social media. I post some of the highlights, some of my favorite moments. Again, make sure to review. Leave at least 5 stars. Come on, somebody. And help us declare and to demonstrate the gospel. One of the things I do want to say before I go today, I've got a gift I want to get in your hands. And actually, it's a little guide. I call it Believer's Guide. And I actually put it together. I'm getting it to you free of charge. If you've got the app, I want you to click in Calvary Church CC app under the More tab. You'll find it there. But things like this: who is God? Who is the Father? Who is Jesus? Who's the Holy Spirit? Why do I need a Savior? What is the Bible? How do I read it? What is the gospel? What does it mean? What does grace mean? What if I do something wrong? What is church? What are my rights as a family member in the local church? What is baptism? Do I need to be baptized? What is communion? I mean, on and on. A lot of questions that we get. I'm making this little book free, available to you today if you'll just download the app, Calvary Church CC. I want to get it in your hands. I want to help you. I want to get you good stuff to equip you, to keep your eyes lifted and on Jesus. I want you to live the life you were meant to live. It's called the Hooper life.
Yes.
Duane, you're going to be back, Pastor Duane, next week. Can't wait to have everybody back next week on the podcast.
Hey, what is up? McKay is here, and I'm one of the pastors here at Calvary. I wanted to come on here quickly and invite all pastors and leaders to check out GCCM, Gospel Circle of Churches and Ministries. We love what's happening, and it's really a dream come true. Join us to have access to monthly Connect calls, staff connects, gospel circles, new covenant worship, our message series, graphics, the custom GCCM app, and more. Make sure you check out gccm.cc today.